Well, Nietzsche was a homosexual who died from syphilis that he got in a homosexual brothel in Genoa, Italy. And many of the things that he was coming out with in his life, some of the crazy stuff, he's viciously anti-Christian. He's the one who said, God is dead. And that the true Superman, and then see, the Nazis took all kinds of ideas from Nietzsche. Nietzsche might not have been positive toward the Nazis himself, but he died in 1900 before all this happened. But his philosophy was taken wholesale by the Nazis. The true Superman wills himself to power. He throws off the morality of the weak herd and does what he wants. He wills himself to power. And that's what, the most famous movie of the Nazi era, Triumph of the Will, directly from that. Nietzsche's sister, who had control of all of his documents, all of his writings, she actually was a close friend of Hitler, and Hitler was with her, dedicated. He actually commissioned a museum and memorial to Nietzsche in Berlin. I got a picture of that in the book. And they took Nietzsche's book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and they put it inside the Tannenbaum Memorial that was where only two other books were kept, Mein Kampf and Alfred Rosenberg's the Myth of the 20th Century. This is like the Bible. And they had Hitler youth meetings around Nietzsche's writings. The kid that killed, who was it? One of the school killers, one of the first ones. He was reading Thus Spoke Zarathustra when he committed those murders. And he did it on, Adolf Hitler's birthday, April 20th, right? Yeah, the Columbine shooting, that was the same spirit that existed in Germany. And it was Nietzsche's writings, and it was Hitler's birthday, and it was associated with homosexuality. It was one of the first stories that came out. It got suppressed immediately. The Drudge Report had it out immediately that the guys that did this were involved in some kind of homosexual connection. That got squelched, as all this stuff gets squelched. I tell you, you look through this book, and you look at the documentation that's here. None of the books that are cited in here were published in the United States after mid-1970s, because all of this stuff has been whitewashed. They've taken it all away. You can't find it. Nobody dares to push it in the sort of secular publishing world. Nobody dares to put this out. There's a few books still that are republished with some of this stuff in it, like William Shirer's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. There's some stuff in that. He was too much of an iconic figure, too much of a giant in history to suppress that way. But anyway, getting a little bit afield. But fascism, let me just tell you, there's another, the fascism as a modern form of government at the time that the Nazi Party was coming together, that the leaders, the fascism was actually not just in Germany at the time. Fascism was actually being developed as a form of government. There was a fascist movement here in the United States. But in Europe, almost every one of the fascist leaders in the different countries were homosexuals. And I've got all that in here. Let's see. We've got, in England, the organization was called the Anglo-German Fellowship and headed by British homosexuals Guy Burgess and Captain John Robert McNamara. In France, the pro-Nazi fascists were two groups, Edouard Pfeiffer and the Populist Party headed by Jacques Doriot. Pfeiffer was openly homosexual, and Doriot probably was, based on the things we put in here. The Belgian fascist movement was called the Rexist movement. It was led by a man named Leon Degrelle, who called himself the spiritual son of Hitler. And in Austria, it was Arthur Seyss-Inquart. I may be pronouncing that name wrong, but actually both of them were identified as homosexuals. In Norway, the fascist movement was headed by a man named Vidkun Quisling. And actually, some of the older people in the room might remember the name Quisling actually was synonymous with traitor for a very long time. If someone was a Quisling, they were a traitor. He was a homosexual. Samuel Egra, who I have cited quite heavily in the book, was a German Jew who lived in Germany up until 1939. And he wrote, in 1945, he published in London, he published a book called Germany's National Vice. Germany's national vice, meaning the vice was homosexuality. And he just laid it bare. It was really the 1945 version of the pink swastika. Now, he didn't have the benefit of 50 years of additional, historical research that other people have done. But what he did was just phenomenal. And unfortunately, he published the book right at the end of World War II, when everybody's attention was shifting away. Everybody was exulting in the victory. They didn't want to think about the Nazis anymore. They were moving on, and so his book sort of sank into obscurity. But he identified all those guys as homosexuals. And then this is in Russia, for example. This homosexualist John Lauritsen and David Thorsett, these are two other homosexual writers, reported that in the Soviet Union, homosexuality became known as the fascist perversion during the 1930s. And they quoted the Soviet writer Maxim Gorky, quote, "There is already a slogan in Germany, eradicate the homosexual and fascism will disappear." This is stuff, I'm not making this stuff up. This is coming from mainstream historians, people that were at the top of the field. And many of the writers, like some of the other sources that I've used in here, Conrad Hayden, knew Hitler. Otto Strasser knew Hitler. These are people that they're not writing from a distance. They actually were there. They witnessed this stuff. And they wrote books, and I've cited all of them. I don't want to keep you too long tonight. I could do a whole 8-hour seminar on this stuff, but I don't want to do that. Let me just take 10 more minutes, okay? Can you hang with me for 10 more minutes? And I'm just going to let me just deal with the 10 minutes that we have, with the implications of this. I haven't talked about the people around Hitler himself. I haven't talked about the lie that's called the gay Holocaust. Actually, I do want to address that for just a moment, because that's something that I've been called on by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the gay leaders a Holocaust revisionist, right? Because I've published this stuff, and supposedly I am denying what they said is that in 1934, in the Night of the Long Knives, that Hitler killed Ernst Röhm and a bunch of other people, and that marked the beginning of a Holocaust against gays, right? The Holocaust is a Jewish phenomenon. There were other people killed, but really, when you're talking about the Holocaust, this is about the Jews. But what the gays have done is attempted, by the fact that some homosexuals were interred in Nazi camps, to sort of tie into that and say that they should be treated, they should have the same amount of sympathy that the Jews do because of the situation. I want to debunk that right now. Yes, there were homosexuals who were put in camps, but they were not put in death camps. There were only 6 death camps, and those were used to exterminate the Jews. And I don't deny that. I don't even question the Holocaust of the Jews. I believe that there were 6 million Jews that were killed by the Nazis, and I believe that they were fully capable of doing that, and that's what they intended to do. I'm not denying that. I'm not challenging it I'm affirming it. What I am challenging is this whole idea that there was a gay Holocaust. It's absolute lie. Hitler did kill Ernst Röhm, and he did kill a number of other people in June of 1934, but he did it for political reasons, not to purge the party of homosexuals. As a matter of fact, the people that killed Ernst Röhm and the others were homosexuals themselves, and they remained in the party all the way to the end. Hitler always was surrounded by male homosexuals, from the beginning all the way to the end. Now, he had relations with 4 women that I've been able to determine, but they were very perverted. He was a coprophile. Excuse me for this, but he was sexually excited by human excrement. And what he would do is he would have the women excrete on him, and it was a form of masochism. And very, very sick, very disgusting, but that was what he did. But he was also involved with homosexuality. He had many homosexual partners, and everybody around him, the closest people, his chauffeur, his bodyguards, Rudolf Hess, the deputy Führer of the Nazi Party, Walter Funk, the Reich Minister of Economics, Hans Frank, who was his lawyer. All these